Okay, then I can keep it up with it. But doing all that for cool. Okay, thanks. Yep. No, no, no. We're waiting on the weather. I'm all great. That's never a big parade.
que se vean en directo acá.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name is CJ Zaya. I'm the attorney for the Lopez family in this case. We want to make a few statements and a few words about the case, and of course we'll be able to take some questions about what we found out since the explosion on the 3rd. My good friend Reverend Charles McKenzie once said, love your neighbor as yourself. He was reminding us as we gathered that day that all of life is interconnected and we're all bound together. When we are negligent and fail to be mindful of this truth, we cause tragedy and immeasurable agony. When you do not keep these words of wisdom in mind, we end up creating tragic outcomes to human beings. Now, the reason I start with this is because a terrible tragedy has unfolded that was totally unnecessary. On January 13th, just a couple days ago, we received a call early in the morning. It was 2:30 in the morning, and we had a call. One of the nurses in Largo Medical Center had decided to call the family and said, look, Junior, Adrian Lopez is in grave danger of passing. We immediately scrambled. The family drove up to Largo. I drove to the hospital here at Blake where Adrian Lopez, the senior, the father was, and under treatment for the burns that he received. We were able to get him discharged with cooperation from the hospital, and I drove him that morning to Largo. That morning I had the honor and privilege, unfortunately, of witnessing this terrible tragedy unfold with the Lopez's family. Now, when I'm done speaking, Karina will speak to you all. That's the sister of the deceased, of Adrian Jr., and daughter of Adrian Sr. and Francisca. And we were there, and the doctors came in and basically said that he's hours away from losing his life. I will never forget Adrian Sr., his dad, who had struggled to bring the family here, who was deeply disturbed and asking the doctors if he could give, because the son had lost the function of the kidneys, of his liver. He had been bleeding in his lungs. They had given him massive amounts of blood, and they were just barely keeping him alive. And he said, please take my liver, my lungs, my whatever. And it was one of the most horrendous things to witness, a father, a mother, speaking to the doctors about the loss of their son. We asked a lot of questions of why he died, what could have been done. The family was very, we're sort of perplexed, because when he had been here and the explosion occurred, he came out of this building, the first one before his dad, and there were no emergency people who came to his rescue. They had to walk almost a block to get some assistance. And Dad, you know, was not understanding why is my son dead, this 22-year-old boy that was just getting his degree in engineering, the future. And he did so well. He was doing well, everybody thought, at Blake, at the hospital here in Bradenton. But he was transferred suddenly, weeks later, and apparently they put him on a machine to bypass the lungs to clean the blood, to oxygenate the blood. And Largo Medical Center, according to what the doctor said, had that machine, and Blake didn't. They were then going to transfer him to Tampa General, but there were no beds, we assume because of COVID and other reasons. So I was told that he was going to stay at Largo. January 6th, he was not doing too bad, and then from then on it went bad. So the parents, the sister, were present. They got to see Adrian Jr., but he was unconscious, and they were able to say goodbye to their son and brother. But this was totally unnecessary. Just a month and a half ago, right down the road over here, a block or so away, we had a company that was drilling and clipped the line for Tico Gas or People's Gas, depending what you want to call it, the gas line. And over I believe six different emergency groups, firefighter groups from even as far away as Sarasota responded. So over 2 hours had passed since the gas had started leaking, I know for a fact we have investigators involved in this, many, and they've checked all the sewers, the manholes for gas, and they were evacuating people from the trailers back here over here. They even told the family to go back in. They could go back in, and they did. And that's when the explosion occurred. After they had been given permission to go back home, that it was all clear. This tragedy did not have to happen. There's a great many people who are responsible for this, or companies and individuals. But a couple of things that to point out, we're still investigating. We know a lot more about who dug the lines, who may be responsible, but there's a whole litany of things that must be done when you're going to dig, and there could be gas. Now, this home has no gas connected to it. It's not like you had gas coming in and there was a problem. No, there's no gas that naturally comes into this home. It was an explosion that was created by the gas leak down the road there and going through the sewers, and came up through the sewer system, and that's where the gas came up and eventually exploded. So they had no gas in the house. They didn't think they were in danger necessarily, but they did heed the words of law enforcement, and we know for a fact there was at least a fireman that said you can go back in. And they did, and then the explosion occurred. One of the things that I'll never forget is when discussing with the medical personnel at the hospital, if you think about it, the reason he is dead, more likely than not, is because he probably inhaled either fumes or the explosion, and Dad was exhaling. It's a split second. We don't know why this happens or how this happens, but for sure, Adrian Lopez Jr. had some problems with the esophagus that went to the lungs that caused his death. I will speak more about this in a minute, but at this time, I would like to have Karina come up and give a statement. Karina, get it? This is Adrian's. Do you want the podium? Yes. Open it up if you could, Ryan. Thank you. I don't know if we can. Ahí está bien. Si quiere.
First of all, on behalf of my family and I, we would like to thank our family, friends, donations, and associations who have supported us unconditionally throughout this whole process. Quiero dar gracias a todos los familiares, amigos, asociaciones, donaciones que nos han ayudado en nuestro camino. Unfortunately, I lost my amazing brother, my parents' loving son, Adrian Lopez Jr. He's left a big hole in our heart, and our nightmare has become a reality. He had such high expectations for his life. He wanted to become an engineer and make a difference, and sadly he couldn't complete that. Mi hermano, mi único hermano, y él fue buen hijo, Adrián López Jr. Nos dejó un hoyo en nuestro corazón, y todo esto no se siente real. Él quiso tener su carrera y ayudar a la gente, al mundo, y no tuvo tiempo. For that matter, on behalf of him, we will not stay silent about the negligence from the higher authorities who are supposed to keep us safe. It's not fair. He didn't deserve to go through this pain or the suffering. We want to make sure this tragedy causes awareness to everybody to take precaution, even if it's the smallest thing. The gas leak, they said it wasn't a big deal, and it turned out horribly wrong. And and we just want to make sure everyone takes anything to help out so nothing like this could happen again. If they had, my brother would still be here and his death will not be forgotten. Aquí yo estoy y no nos vamos a quedar en silencio porque esta negligencia de las autoridades no ayudó a que todos estuviéramos salvos. Queremos que todos sepan que aunque hay un problema más pequeño, que tengan todas las precauciones para que nada de esto sucediera. Si fuera así, mi hermano todavía estuviera aquí. Currently, my father, he's still in the hospital battling as well, just to get back to us. My mother is heartbroken. We have funeral bills now, medical bills, and we still have yet to find a home. And we ask for any donations to help us move forward. And I just would like to say to the public, don't take your loved ones for granted, because they could be gone in a split second. Yo quiero decir que mi papá todavía está en el hospital, todavía está luchando para regresar a nuestra familia. Y mi mamá está destrozada. Ahorita tenemos ahora pagos de funeral, de médico, y todavía ni tenemos casa. Si todos nos pueden ayudar con donaciones para que podamos seguir adelante. Y quiero decir que pues que aprecien a todos, a los que quieran, porque nuestra vida se pueden ir en un segundo, como la de mi hermano. Thank you.
Gracias.
I wanted to say a couple things about Adrian Jr. I mean, he was just one exam short of an engineering degree, and the family was doing everything to get him there. Father was an engineer in Mexico. I mean, the dream, they worked so hard to get him to this point, the family as a unit. Everything really depends on that family unit, and not only they've lost their dreams, they've lost their son. So a young man with a bright future is gone and was totally unnecessary. We have with us Gregorio Burgess. He is known as Moyo. He's a semi-personality in the Latino Mexicano community. He has radio shows, and he's featured all over the country. But what he did was to create the GoFundMe page for the family. So Gregorio, please, sir, if you would.
Good afternoon. This tragedy that struck the family, we were all super moved. Anytime that I come here, I'm moved and shaken by the sight behind us. And I just first of all want to thank everyone that has donated, not once, not twice, but 3 times and continually. Earlier today, we met Elaine, who came up and donated her stimulus check to the family. Such a great move. If you don't need it and you can give it, ladies and gentlemen, this is the right situation for it. I'm a USF Bull, and Adrian was a step away from receiving his engineer degree. A step away, first of his generation in the family, of pushing his family and their legacy further. We ask that anyone out there that can continue to help, it doesn't have to be a lot, please. At this time, we're asking for donations for the funeral. We've created a second GoFundMe that goes directly to Karina and the family. So please, once again, thank you to all the ones that have already given, and to please continue to give. I want to thank Saya and Saya Law and his whole crew that has totally tremendous team that has been there for the family as well. And our hearts are with the family and this community. It's not just them, it's so many that know them and are grieving at this time. Thank you.
Do you have any questions or anything at this time for anyone? Are we good? Yes, we pretty much know what has happened, and parties have lawyered up. Let's put it that way. I want to talk one thing about the family's concern, which is very legitimate, is that this didn't need to happen. I'm not being dramatic, and I'm not trying to make a big deal about the money, this, that, and the other. This is about this explosion happened 2.5 hours after the pipe was nicked. Over there, way over there. We're also looking at why is it that this house exploded and they weren't properly warned. Equally at peril were the neighbors. People were evacuated to this house, this side, and this is where the explosion was. So it's not just an issue about the family, as they're saying, but if you lose a loved one because of incompetence, irresponsibility, I don't know. And to be honest, I don't know where the first responders were after they told them to go back in, because they weren't around. It's too dangerous for them to come and get them, but not too dangerous to tell them to go inside their home. I don't know. I'm very curious. I want to know, and we will find. That's the justice aspect of this. Accidents happen, but at some point you have to accept responsibility, not just from TECO and the companies that drilled and whether the maps were right, all of that we understand. But this explosion did not have to happen. It just did not have to happen. This young man's life it wasn't worth losing. Somebody, multiple people have failed this family, this neighborhood, and our community. So what we want to make sure that is not just, put under the rug. Oh, it's too bad. Here's some money or whatever they want. No. Something. We had at least six fire departments from as far as Sarasota were here. They have a team that were here. And they put a lot of people's lives at risk. And it's not just the fire, not just law enforcement, it goes from TECO all the way down. So we aren't going to stop until we know exactly what happened, who did what, and hopefully they will correct their actions so this doesn't happen again in our community. And that's very important for the family and for us. And it is a Latino community, a Latino family, and I think they deserve as much as any other community. All right?
What is the status of potential lawsuits at this time?
Well, look, the worst thing is to throw stones at somebody that's not responsible, right? So what we're doing is the responsible thing that we've done for the last 30 years. We're going to investigate, we're going to find out who is responsible, and we're going to hold them accountable. But just to throw lawsuits at people for the sake of filing is ridiculous. There's several ways. Now, we're talking also not only of corporations, but you're talking about fire departments, right? You're talking about law enforcement. Somebody told them, people told to go back in. They weren't in when it blew up. They were outside here, and they were told to go back in. They'd be alive today. So it's going to happen. It's just when, and it won't be too far or too long from now. But as you know, if you go after the city or the county, you have to give notice, and it takes a lot longer, right?
Now, who have you given notice to?
We are sending to all the departments that were involved here. Again,
Along with the sheriff's department?
everybody that was involved here. And let me explain. There's a process, as you know, called discovery. And a lot of times, I mean, if you go to a company and said, or somebody say, hey, tell me what happened, you know what they're going to do. They're not going to tell you anything. But sometimes you have to file the lawsuit to get them to be put under oath and ask them a ton of questions, and then which leads you to the next guy or the next woman or the next situation to find out really what happened. And it's interesting when you get an individual on their own. If you deal with law enforcement, I've won a lot of trials and criminal trials and so forth. If If people are lying, if you separate them, you'll get the truth. And I'm not saying they're lying here. All we're trying to do, and I'm sure nobody wanted this to happen, is to prevent it from happening again. And that's very legitimate in what we're saying here. So it doesn't happen. If there's a leak again, that they're on top of it. They think through what they're doing. That they do the most cautious thing. That's what we're trying to do. Anything else? Sí, cómo no. Estamos dispuestos al final. Anybody else, any questions? Anything for the family? For Karina, before she leaves? ¿Cuándo va a tener funeral y todo eso? ¿Quién quiere hablar del funeral? I know they're working on it. I believe it's going to be Wednesday, right? Come here, come here. Okay, venga, Karina. Explica cuándo va a ser. Just say what you think it's going to be.
Right now we're still planning everything for him. I can't even believe it. He's younger than me and he had left.
He just passed on Wednesday. I know there's an autopsy. He will be brought down here, and I believe the family's going to have a funeral. We're hoping on Wednesday. Is that correct?
Yeah, Wednesday.
Wednesday. You know the funeral home? Okay.
West Side Funeral Home in Palmetto.
West Side Funeral Home in Palmetto. Do we have a time yet? 1 p.m. on Wednesday, West Side Funeral Home, Palmetto, this coming Wednesday. Okay, anything else? We good? Thank you. Está bien que hiciste. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Did you take her? You guys go with her? Okay, moment. Gracias por todo. ¿Cómo quiere hacerlo? ¿Aquí? Sí. ¿Quiere Karina? ¿Quiere Karina?
Karina habló ya en español, lo que no tengo es
Sorry? We can do that. If you could talk. Ellie? Yes, sir? Talk to this gentleman, please. Whatever he needs.